Okay, let's cultivate our motivation. And you can really think how fortunate we are to be listening to the Dharma on New Year's Eve instead of out doing some craziness. Celebrating that we're 1 year closer to death. What an incredible thing to celebrate. So let's really think of our fortune to listen to the Dharma, to be able to transform our minds, and to have all the conditions to do so. And have a strong determination to really make the most of this. And to do that by doing all of our actions with the motivation of bodhicitta. So opening and broadening our mind so it includes all the other living beings. Especially on New Year's Eve, all the people who are struggling so hard to be happy, doing all sorts of things, thinking that it's fun, and not realizing that moment by moment the life is ending and death is approaching. And that once this human life is gone, there's no reliving it. We are obliged to go forward to our next rebirth, taking only our karma and our habitual mental states with us. And so it's great fortune to want to dedicate this time to working on improving our actions of body, speech, and mind for the benefit of others, so that our life can be meaningful. And then, as we approach the new year, we do so without regret, without fear, and with a lot of optimism to continue practicing. New Year's Eve. It's a strange holiday, isn't it, New Year's Eve? You know, that really it's like celebrating that we're 1 year closer to death. Yeah, the old year's gone, we have the new year. Yeah, so 1 year's over, got that one done with. Yeah, so 1 year closer to death. And then the way we celebrate is going out and getting intoxicated. And then saying and doing and thinking all sorts of things that we would never say and do and think in our normal state of mind. And calling that fun. Yeah? And I was thinking, you know, it's like, because this is probably a night that's a really high crime night, because people drink so much, and so drinking and driving, you know, rapes, murders, all sorts of things that people do. Also, it's full moon, you know, and when they're intoxicated, they just don't think, yeah? And, like, how many people are going to wake up tomorrow morning kind of, you know, with a worse situation in the new year than they left the old year with because of trying so hard to have a good time? Yeah, and then losing, you know, not being able to manage or reflect on their actions of body, speech, and mind. Yeah?
Non-virtuous things that I've done, but there's this feeling of just that I'm 1 year closer to death, and that it's the time to reflect, and then also the tradition of making New Year's resolutions.
Okay.
Maybe not so much anymore, but
yeah. Okay, so you're saying that it could have a positive thing if we're aware that the time's running out, and so it really turns our mind towards virtue. And if we make strong New Year's resolutions, I don't know, I found that most people don't keep their New Year's resolutions. That somehow we're not so good in being able to accurately assess what we're capable of doing, And so we make a promise that we're not actually capable of keeping because we haven't thought about it deep enough. If we had thought about the situation deeper, we might be capable of keeping it. If we'd really thought of the disadvantages in more depth, of the bad behavior we were doing and the advantages of cleaning up our behavior, if we had really thought very deeply about that and continue to think deeply about that in the new year, then there's a chance of keeping the New Year's resolutions. But if we don't do that thinking on our part and just say, I'm going to do this or that, but without creating the causes to be able to keep the resolution, then we usually aren't able to. What do you think? Did you make New Year's resolutions last year? Yeah?
I think in the past I will always make so many. I didn't write them down.
Uh-huh.
But there would be so many at a certain time. I think it's impossible.
Yeah. Okay. So you found yourself making so many New Year's resolutions that you couldn't keep them all. So then you just threw them all out the window. Yeah, I imagine there's a number of people like that, just kind of too high expectations or something. Yeah. Or not enough real understanding and determination to change. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I don't. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Right. Yes. And that's the way we are. We get very enthusiastic, but then we don't do what we need to do to really actualize the aspiration. Yeah. And so that's a real skill that we have to practice. It's one thing having the aspiration, and then the second thing is thinking, what do I need to do to actualize that aspiration? And then creating the causes for that. Yeah. And going out and doing it. And this is actually part of what the far-reaching joyous effort is about. Yeah. Joyous effort isn't just, oh, I'm going to conquer the world. It's really thinking, kind of, what are the aspirations and how can I go about actualizing them? And how can I keep my mind, balanced and steady and keep it joyful? And, and so really thinking about these things and assessing beforehand instead of making wild promises. Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Uh-huh. Okay. Yeah. Okay. 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 So then, what about these aspirations that we read in the Dharma text? Especially you hear some of the Bodhisattva aspirations here. I'm going to lead all sentient beings to enlightenment by myself alone. Okay. So one part of our mind says, "Oh, that's just so impractical. I can't do that. So I shouldn't make aspirations like that." actually, that's the wrong way of thinking. When it comes to really doing something like that to work for others, bodhisattvas do make all these far-out aspirations that they can't actually actualize. But the thing is that by having the aspiration, then when you encounter a situation that maybe isn't as grandiose as what you aspired to do, you are capable of doing that. Okay? In other words, you say, okay, I'm going to lead all sentient beings to enlightenment by myself alone, you know, as if there doesn't need to be any other Buddhas or Bodhisattvas or anybody, or, you know, and that's impractical. But having made that kind of resolution in the real strong spirit of bodhicitta, then when somebody comes to you and says, I can't finish my chore, can you help me? You say yes. Yeah? Okay? Did you get what I mean? That sometimes by making these elaborate things, it enables us to do the small ones. Whereas if we don't make the elaborate ones, when the small opportunities come, we miss them and we're not capable of taking them. Yeah? Well, I think, so is it the same thing when you're making New Year's resolutions? I don't know. I think my mind is a little bit different, because when I make these bodhisattva aspirations, one part of my mind is aware that, you know, I'm not capable of doing it now, and even when I'm Buddha, you know, I won't be capable of doing it, but that it's still going to benefit me. And that's why I think when I make these incredible bodhisattva aspirations, whereas the New Year's resolutions to stop eating chocolate cake is something I actually can do, yeah, but I don't necessarily want to do it. Yeah, and I'm expecting myself to be able to do it in an unrealistic way, and so there's something else going on in the making of the aspiration. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That would be the fact that to make these aspirations for bodhicitta, we actually have steps that we follow the path. Where the chocolate cake thing, that's all we have. We only have that. We don't have to. We don't need anyone laying out the steps of how to actually go about losing that.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's another difference, is that the bodhicitta ones is a path to follow to get there, and some of our worldly ones, we don't know what to do to actually get there. We have the aspiration, you know. Like some people may aspire, oh, you know, I don't want to get as angry next year, but they don't know how to deal with their anger. They have no tools. Yeah. So I'm not saying don't make those aspirations, because even somebody aspiring, you know, oh, I don't want to be so angry next year, even if they're not totally capable of doing it, it's still something good that they make that aspiration. It's better than saying, well, I'm incapable of keeping it, and so I won't even make it. Yeah. So it's kind of like taking the precepts, you know, whatever level of precepts we take, we have to have some level of confidence that we can keep them somewhat, even though we can't keep them perfectly. Okay? But we don't expect ourselves to keep them perfectly. But we also don't kind of just say, well, I didn't take them, so it didn't matter. It doesn't matter. Yeah. I think the thing is being realistic. That's what it seems to me to be about, is being realistic and approaching our aspirations realistically. What? And determination, sure.
How meaningful is this aspiration?
Mm-hmm.
If I'm highly motivated to work with my anger, then that might stick.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Very true. And that's the thing. If you're highly motivated, it's going to stick. But what is it? The motivation is one of the causes that we need to constantly cultivate to be able to make the aspiration stick. Okay, and that's what I meant by we sometimes make the aspiration and then don't create the causes. Whereas if we keep reminding ourselves of our motivation and why we want to change this thing in ourselves, then that gives us more courage and more ability. Like you said, more determination to do it. And so even if we mess up sometimes, we don't just throw our hands up and say, oh, this is useless. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. 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 So we have to word our aspirations in a very constructive way so we know the way to go. Not just, I don't want to do this, but this is what I am going to do. So like with the chocolate cake, instead of, I'm not going to eat chocolate cake, it's, okay, when the urge to eat chocolate cake comes, instead of doing that, I'm going to do this. Yeah, and then having that aspiration in that way. Yeah. But also, New Year's makes me think that it's so funny because it's just a merely labeled day, isn't it? I mean, you get up in the morning, it's exactly like every single other day. It's not like, it's different in any way. Time is time, a day is a day. But our mind imputes something on it and then makes everything feel quite different. And when you think about it, it's like each day we wake up is a new year, isn't it? Yeah. Each day we wake up is the opportunity to make a strong resolution or a strong aspiration or, redirect our thoughts and our actions in the way we want to do it. So we can take that resolution, and do that each day. We don't have to wait until a day called New Year's to do it. And then you think, well, why even wait until the morning to do it? If there's something we want to change, each moment is a new year, isn't it? Yeah. Each succeeding moment in our life is a new year and is an opportunity to direct our energy in the way we want it to go. Yeah. So we don't have to wait for a societal new year or even for tomorrow morning, just right in the moment, and we change. I think that's when they talk about Zen mind, beginner's mind, I think that's what they're talking about, is, greeting each moment in a very fresh way as an opportunity to really be who we want to be, rather than each moment as like, oh, here's another moment that I'm going to be depressed, or here's another moment I'm going to fail, or, that kind of attitude that we often get stuck in. Yeah? But each moment is a new year. Okay. So yesterday we last week, it was like yesterday, wasn't it? Time has a very strange quality to it. We were in the middle of this one that says, whichever occurs, be patient with both. Okay? And the explanation was, whether happiness or suffering befalls the body and mind, as was explained in the context of transforming adverse conditions into the path, you should transform it into a factor conducive to accomplishing enlightenment. Okay? So, and another translation of this one was, endure whichever situation arises, either good or bad. Okay? So this is a way of contemplating impermanence, and our changing fortunes, that with each new moment we don't really know what's going to happen, and things often go the way we don't expect. So there's situations that arise that we call bad, other ones that arise that we call good or misfortunate or fortunate. And if we get too stuck in the good and bad and fortune and misfortune, then our mind can become quite unwieldy. You know, it's like, oh, I've had so much misfortune, you know, I can't do Dharma practice. Or, oh, I've had so much fortune, I have no time for Dharma practice. Okay? These are two things that regularly happen to people. Yeah, change happens as it will. And if it's something we consider bad, then we say, oh, you know, I've got to just take care of my life right now. There's no time for Dharma, which I think is a great pity, because Dharma is the means to take care of our life. Yeah. But many people, you know, kind of some misfortune, they get sick or they lose their job. Actually, now you have more time to practice. This is a perfect time to practice, you know, taking adversity into the path, but they just say to themselves, I can't practice, and leave it. Or other people, you know, something nice happens. Oh, you form a new relationship. Well, forget Dharma. I don't need that anymore. This person's going to make me happy. Yeah? Or I just got a promotion. Oh, yip-de-doo, you know, this is going to do it. I don't need those other things that Dharma talks about that are so hard anyway. Okay, so what we should do instead is have a more even keel towards our life, and not go so up and not go so down, okay? And hold the Dharma as the thing that really is the most important thing in our life, whether the external situations are the way we want them or not want them, because whatever they are, they're going to change. That we know, don't we? Yeah, whatever they are, they're going to change. So why be so reactive to them? Yeah, let's just keep our even keel, keep purifying, keep creating merit, keep practicing, listening to teachings, and so on, okay? Instead of getting battered around. There's this very nice Chinese story. I never can tell it exactly right. Are you good at telling it? About the guy with this horse? Yeah. So it's really quite a nice story. So there was an old man who had a horse, and what was it? Then his horse ran away, and he said, oh, what great misfortune, you know, this is terrible. And then somebody brought his horse back, who wound up marrying his daughter's son, and he said, oh, this is wonderful, this horse is good fortune. And then what happened? Okay, here, you tell it.
That's the only part I remember.
Oh, okay. The son rode on the horse and fell off, and then broke his yeah. And then the military came to conscript him, and he didn't have to go. So he said, "Well, this is good," and so, you know, it was back and forth. Whatever happened, you know, you thought it was fortunate, and it turned out misfortune. And when it was misfortune, it turned out fortune. You know, and so best just to keep our mind steady through all these things, and not, you know, get so into this. Oh, it's going well or it's not going well. Yeah, because whatever it is, it's going to change. Okay, and you know, in the times when it's bad, like, don't get so stuck. Like, you know, my needs aren't being met. You know, we can make a big deal out of that one. You know, I have certain needs and my needs are not being met. Yeah, and we get really into that one. Or, you know, then things are good and it's like, oh, everything's wonderful, I love everybody. You know, I mean, we just go to some extremes. Yeah, but rather than do that, just to look at it and say, well, each opportunity is a chance to practice, you know, instead of our mind getting into my needs aren't being met. You know, it's like, okay, well, what are these needs? Where did they come from? What are the causes of them? Are they really needs or are they wants? And what's the relationship between them and the self-centered thought? And what other ways can I, you know, if they're too much from, you know, really deep-seated ones that I can't uproot immediately, how can I kind of pacify them so that I can keep on going and, you know, without being too hard on myself? So to see everything as an opportunity instead of just making a story and a script for ourselves. Okay? Yeah. And so, not getting so super sensitive and very easily frustrated when things don't go our way. We can really get into that, can't we? It's like, oh, I try and do this, and this isn't working, and that doesn't work, and the other thing doesn't work. Nobody listens to me anyway, and why should I even try? Because it doesn't make any difference. Right? Did you have a question? You started? Okay. Yeah. So we can get into all these kinds of things, can't we? But just, practice whatever it is, endure whatever it is, okay? Because whatever it is an opportunity to put the Dharma into practice in one way or another, okay? So when we have very good times, then when you're doing the taking and giving meditation, really focus on the giving part, and all the fortune you have, all the generosity you've received, the kindness you've received, the way things are going well, then just wish that for other people. Yeah, and when you're having a hard time, then take on the sufferings of others and imagine that kind of drowning out our own self-centeredness, which is the core of our own misery. Okay? So use the Dharma in whatever situation we encounter, because the Dharma is always there. Yeah. It's like in the prayers we say, where we say, Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, please pay attention to me. They're already there paying attention. We're the ones who are spacing out. So it's the same thing with the Dharma. The Dharma is always there for us to practice. It's sometimes, our mind's somewhere else. Yeah, la la land. Okay. Then the next one says, guard both at the cost of your life. And the explanation is the pledged or natural commitments of the 3 vows you have taken, and in particular the commitments of mind training explained above, should be guarded even at the cost of your life. Okay, so when it says guard both at the cost of your life, there's another translation that says guard both points more preciously than your life. Okay, so the first point, in general, it could mean abandoning the 10 non-virtues, okay? Or it could mean following the various precepts that we've taken. So here it mentioned the 3 vows. So here we have the pratimoksha, or individual liberation vows, the bodhisattva vow, and the tantric vow. Okay, so it talks about 3 sets of vows, or 3 vows. These are the 3. And they're usually taken in that order. Okay, with the pratimoksha, the individual liberation vow first. So that could include your 5 precepts or monastic precepts, things like that. Then on that foundation, you take the bodhisattva vow, and then on that foundation, you take the tantric vow. And they're all based on abandoning the 10 non-virtues. Okay? So that's one of the factors when it said guard both at the cost of your life. That's one of the both. The second element of the both is specifically these commitments and precepts of the thought training. So the things that we've been working on through the last few teachings, all these very short little phrases, to really keep them in mind, either memorize them or keep the meaning in mind, and so that we make sure to practice it. And the basis of all these different thought training practices is the bodhicitta. And so first and foremost, to cultivate the bodhicitta and not let it decline. Okay? And so the biggest thing that makes our bodhicitta decline is... Anger. Okay. So soul-centered thought is what you need to overcome to generate the bodhicitta. But anger is the one big thing that can make us lose our bodhicitta or make our bodhicitta decline. Okay? Because it's anger that looks at some sentient being and says, I am fed up with this one, you know, may have love and compassion for everybody else, but this one, forget it, you know, and then you leave that one sentient being out of your bodhicitta, and your whole bodhicitta is lost at that moment, because bodhicitta is predicated on having the aspiration to become a Buddha for each and every sentient being. So even if you leave yourself out, then you're degenerating the bodhicitta. Or if you leave an enemy out, you know, somebody who just drives you totally nuts. So that's why it's so important, you know, when we find ourselves getting irritated before it's full-blown anger, to take care of the irritation, you know. When we're annoyed before it's full-blown hatred, take care of the annoyance, okay? And so really be on the lookout, because anger is like a fire that just burns up our virtue and burns everything up. In the 8 dangers of Tara, isn't anger like the fire? Yeah? Yeah. Burns the forest of virtue, right? And attachment's like the flood. It just sweeps you away, you know, and there you go. And wrong views are like chains, right? Or the thieves. Okay, and the chains, miserliness. Yeah. Okay. So those analogies are quite nice to meditate on, aren't they? You can really see how they work. Mm-hmm. Okay. Then the next one says, train in the 3 difficulties. Yeah? Or another translation is, practice the 3 hardships. So the explanation in the book says, in the first place, it is hard to remember the remedies for the disturbing emotions. Secondly, it's difficult to oppose them. And thirdly, it is difficult to cut their continuity. Therefore, recognizing the disturbing emotions and mindful of their disadvantages, make effort through various means to dispel them and put an end to the sequence. Okay? So, in these 2 explanations, they have slightly different for the 3 difficulties. Here, it's remember the remedies, and the second one is to apply them. Okay, to oppose the afflictions. And the third is to cut off the continuity, which means with the wisdom realizing emptiness, you know, purify the afflictions and their seeds from the mind. The other one says, first is to recognize the delusions when they manifest in the mind, that's the first hard thing. And the second one is to turn them away with temporary measures. And then the third is to sever their continuity with wisdom. Okay, so it's just the first one that can have different interpretations. Either way we interpret it, whether it's to recognize the delusions or to remember the remedies, you know, both are things we have to do, right? Yeah, because if we don't recognize the afflictions, then there's no ways we can deal with them. Which is why I continuously say, when we see a fault in ourselves, we should celebrate, because that's the first step of doing something about it, is seeing it. Okay? Whereas when we can't see it, then there's nothing we can do. Okay? So whether it's recognizing the defilement or remembering the, you know, the remedy, because sometimes it's like, oh, I'm angry. Well, what do I do? You know? All of our Dharma teachings are, you know, off somewhere else. Got lost in the stratosphere. So we have to, you know, keep the Dharma teachings in our heart, so when a situation comes up, we know what to do. And then the second difficult thing is to actually apply them, and here really deal with the afflictions on a level in which we can subdue them in that moment. And so that's by practicing the specific antidote for the specific affliction. So for anger, meditating on impermanence, meditating on love and compassion and fortitude. For attachment, meditating on patience. For jealousy, on rejoicing. So these kinds of things, using the specific remedies. And then the third one is to sever the continuity of the afflictions completely. And the only thing that does that is the wisdom realizing emptiness. No other thing can sever the continuity of the afflictions. So that's why learning about and thinking about and practicing emptiness is so important, because that's the key to really cutting the continuity. Bodhicitta can't do that. Bodhicitta is wonderful, but it doesn't have the power to eradicate the afflictions from the root. Okay, so we really need that wisdom realizing emptiness. In the Theravada tradition, they have a way when they talk about abandoning the afflictions. And this three things kind of reminded me of these three in the Theravada. And the first one is applying the temporary antidote, which is the second one here. So meditating on impermanence for attachment, or, applying the specific remedy for that specific affliction. The second one is suppressing the affliction by generating samadhi. And here, don't take suppression as something negative. It's not like psychological suppression. But what it means is when you have attained these states of jhana or dhyana, then the afflictions are naturally subdued because your mind is single-pointedly focused on a virtuous object, or at least on a neutral object. Okay, so they suppress the afflictions, but these states of concentration don't have the ability to cut them from the root. So the third way of abandoning is through wisdom and cutting, the afflictions from the root. So it's kind of like the three higher trainings. Okay, so the higher training in ethical conduct, then opposing the affliction with the direct remedy for that specific one. The higher training in concentration, developing these jhanic states, which, to attain them, you have to be able to suppress the afflictions. And then the higher training in wisdom, where you develop the insight to really cut the afflictions from the root by seeing the ultimate nature. Okay. So we got to just start at the beginning and do what we can do, right? Yeah. Okay. Then the next one says, transform everything into the great vehicle path. Okay, great vehicle means Mahayana. Okay, so like in our, when we're taking refuge, I take refuge in the Buddha. May each and every sentient being understand the great way completely. Great way there is referring to the Mahayana, And when you understand the great way completely, what do? You generate the Bodhi mind, the bodhicitta. Okay, so that's that first line in refuge. Okay, so transform everything into the great vehicle path. And the explanation says, all your actions should be accompanied by love and compassion for all sentient beings and consequent interest in their enlightenment, so that until the end of cyclic existence, the actions of your body, speech, and mind, as well as seeing, hearing, remembering, and contact, can be transformed into the path of the great vehicle. Okay? So what this is saying is that all of our actions should be accompanied by love and compassion. It's not that we generate love and compassion in the morning and then we forget it as soon as we see some sentient being. Sometimes that happens, doesn't it? I got up in the morning, it feels so good, love and compassion for everybody. Then, you go and somebody left, they didn't wipe off the sink, they left water in the sink. And instantly our love and compassion is gone over some tiny thing, isn't it? Like, love and compassion. Then you go into the hallway, you step out of your room. Oh, somebody didn't vacuum this. They didn't do their chores. I always have to do their chores. How come it's always me? You know, and we're often running on that kind of story. Okay, so this is saying not like that, that love and compassion should be in our mind constantly with all the actions we do. So one of the reasons at the Abbey why we have different times throughout the day where we say different verses, you know, some of them that we've written ourselves, some of them are translations, some of them are recitations of text. Why do we do this so often throughout the day? To remind ourselves and to bring ourselves back to what we really want to do and what we really want to be. Okay? So, so that it gives us a fighting chance to kind of keep this one. Okay? So to have love and compassion and interest in their enlightenment. Yeah. So this is important, to really be interested in other people attaining enlightenment. Not just, oh yeah, wouldn't it be great if they were enlightened, but, you know, I hope they vacuum the floor first, you know. Or I want them to get enlightened, but, you know, they should stop drinking first. Or, you know, they should stop being terrorists first, or, you know, whatever it is. Okay. So of course, you know, we want sentient beings to stop the actions that cause them and other people damage. Yeah. But in wanting them to stop those actions, recognize that they're the ones who suffer the most from it. And so to have an attitude of love and compassion for people who cause their own misery through their own confused actions. Okay? So whenever we see somebody doing something that's negative, instead of getting angry at them, you know, to think, oh, you know, they're missing the opportunity to practice. Their mind is overwhelmed by afflictions. This is the exact sentient being that I need to have compassion for. Okay? Shantideva talks about this. You know, I don't know if you noticed in chapter 6 when we were reading it on Christmas Day. You know, there's an analogy that when somebody hits somebody else with a stick, okay, you get mad at the person, okay, but actually we should get mad at the stick, shouldn't we? You know, why is it that we get mad at the person? Because the person's the one that controls the stick, but the stick's the actual thing that does the damage. Well, in the same way, when a person is doing something obnoxious or inappropriate, they are being controlled by their afflictions. They're not operating under their own power, just as the stick isn't operating under its own power. So we should look at the person's afflictions and wish that they be free of those afflictions, because they're, you know, working on affliction power at that time. Yeah? And so in that way, to have compassion for the person, because they're not seeing the situation clearly. Yeah? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It seems like that analysis, which makes a lot of sense, that it is just some passivity around people doing negative things.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Like they just do them, and then you go to yourself, oh, you know, she did that because she's under, you know, her makes you, you know, be free of them. You kind of do that by yourself to try and control your own reaction.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't seem like that. There's certainly things to do that are more helpful.
Okay. Okay. So when somebody is doing something inappropriate that is damaging, directly damaging to somebody else.
And even to them.
Yeah, and even to them. Okay. So you're saying if we just think, oh, kind of, well, this person's under the control of their afflictions, it's really too bad, I have love and compassion, may they be free for their afflictions, and then we just sit there and twiddle our thumbs. Meanwhile, they're, developing cirrhosis of the liver because they're drinking too much and they're, using dirty needles and, spreading disease or whatever, okay? We have to really understand the purpose of these teachings, okay, are to work with our own mind, to keep our mind from falling under the influence of anger. When our mind is free of anger, then we can look at the situation clearly and see what the most appropriate course of action is. So the purpose of these teachings is not to make our actions passive, like, oh, well, somebody is, shooting somebody, they're under the, there's a hunter coming on the property, they want to shoot the deer, they're under the influence of their afflictions, that's too bad, but, don't step on the plants when you're out there shooting the deer. No, we go and we say, sorry, you can't go hunting here. Okay? But the idea is that when you interfere, when you intercede in a situation like that, your own mind isn't angry and upset. That's the thing. That's the important thing. Yeah? So, so often we think that these methods are to make us like doormats where we don't do anything. No, they're to pacify our mind. When our mind is pacified, then we look at the situation and we can really see what a good thing to do in the situation is. Okay? So we have to make sure we understand this correctly. Otherwise, we go on the wrong end. And then otherwise, we're very likely to start criticizing bodhisattvas, because bodhisattvas can be very decisive, and very like, no, don't do that, do this. And you might say, oh, that person's so bossy, But maybe they're saying that because they can clearly see, not because they're angry. Yeah. But we go around thinking, well, bodhisattvas should just be, such a sweetheart. Oh, you have a drinking problem. Here's a bottle of vodka. Don't stress yourself too much, Oh, you have a problem with your temper. You scream and yell at everybody. That's okay. No problem. No, it is a problem. Yeah. But how do we deal with it in a way that is constructive? Yeah, for that we have to have a peaceful mind that isn't taking sides, that isn't reactive, that isn't, controlling. Okay? Yeah. Yeah. At the beginning when we're practicing these things, I mean, most of us fall to that thing of, well, I've just got to sit there. Yeah, because if we do anything, usually our afflictions are operating. So I thought, okay, I just got to sit there like a bum on the lot. But, gradually you begin to realize, no, you need to act, but you need to make your mind peaceful before you act. It's hard, isn't it? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Okay. 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 So, the one in Shantideva where it says to remain like a piece of wood. I always understood that in the past as I remain like a piece of wood. I am inactive. I don't feel anything. I sit there. I am proverbial blump on the log. Yeah, I am the log. I be like a piece of wood, and I just sit there, Okay, well, you know, you're blowing up the plane. I'm sitting there. You know, you're doing this. I'm just sitting there. That's not what Shantideva's talking about. He's not talking about being a doormat. You know, it took me years to understand these verses correctly. What he's saying when he says this, be like a piece of wood, is a piece of wood doesn't care how other people treat it. Okay? If you're a piece of wood and somebody says, oh, you're such a beautiful piece of wood, I love you, you know, you don't get affected by that. You know, that person's praise doesn't manipulate you. It doesn't suck you in. If somebody looks and says, you're an old cracked junky piece of wood, we're going to throw you away, the piece of wood doesn't react. It stays steady. Okay? Yeah? So that's what Shantideva's talking about, is having a mind that is not so reactive, a mind that has more equanimity. You know, at present, our mind is so reactive, the smallest thing, you know, and we're like here, and we're this, and we're that, and, you know, we're just like jumping beans or firecrackers, or, you know, such small things set us off. When he's talking like, be like a piece of log, is the log doesn't care how other people treat him. Yeah? The log just knows it's a log. It knows what it's doing. You praise me, you criticize me. Yeah? That's what he's talking about. Okay? It doesn't mean remain like a piece of log, like a piece of wood, and be inactive. You know? Somebody's beating somebody else up and you just stand there. Okay? So the thing is, the optimum situation is to calm our mind before we act. That's the optimum. Now, sometimes the situation doesn't give us the opportunity to do that. It's like, slow down, you know, can you just stop for a minute? Don't hit that person again. I have to calm my mind down first so I can be free of anger, and then I can go and, you know, interfere. You know, just hold it, freeze, folks. Okay, the situation, you know, yeah, it's not always possible in a situation. So then you have to think quickly, and you have to think, is it going to be more helpful for others in the long run for me to act right now, even if my mind is slightly uncontrolled? Or is it going to be more better? Is it going to be better for sentient beings in the long run for me to just wait a minute, get my mind under control, and then I step in later? Okay. And it's a split-second decision, isn't it? You know, it'd be so nice to have a whole meditation session. You know, like I said, just freeze everybody. I want to meditate on, should I act now, or should I sit and calm my mind down first? What's the right thing to do? You know, I just need some, you know, but life isn't like that, is it? Yeah. So sometimes we just do the best we can and then meditate later. Yeah. Uh-huh.
I sometimes find my mind, you know, when doing something, thinking about all the various aspects that could happen and how I should react or wait. I don't know if that's any better or worse, but like, just like, oh, if this happens, you know, it would be good if I could act this way, you know, and just sort of play out scenario after scenario and just sort of create sort of a catalog almost.
Yeah.
But even that just sort of like, when it happens, it's like, I didn't think of that one.
Right, right. I know.
I didn't think of.
Yeah, it's always like that. Actually, I think that's quite a good thing to do in our meditation, is to think of situations that either have happened to us before and work them through, thinking of how we could do it if it happens again, or think of situations that may happen in the future and think, okay, what kind of mental state would I like to have? How can I get myself in that mental state? And play through these kind of role plays, mental role plays. And then, of course, the physical one. Once we get our mind calm, then how we're going to act physically. I think that's extremely helpful to do in our meditation. because it really gives us a way to work with these tools and practice applying them to our mind, imagining how upset we're going to feel or how afraid or how this or that, okay, and imagine applying them to our mind so we get some practice. But like you said, of course, the thing that actually happens isn't not exactly like the one we thought of, you know. And so, but then what you start doing is then you start thinking of every possible thing, you know, because if you cover them all, maybe none of them will happen, which is kind of completely false. But it gives you much more practice in dealing with these situations, and I think it's actually quite helpful. Yeah. We have to learn how to be creative. Okay, where were we? Okay, actually the next point. Okay, I'll do the next point quickly. So then the birth stories, the Jataka stories say, whether seeing, hearing, remembering, meeting, or talking to them, always do whatever will be beneficial for sentient beings and will bring them peace. Okay? Now we're used to reciting the prayer. When others see, hear, remember, you know, touch or talk to me, may they, you know, receive enlightenment and be free of all suffering forever. This one is what we have to do first so that we can be a correct object for others to look at us the way it is in the second one. So what we have to do first is whether we're seeing, hearing, remember, meeting, or talking to sentient beings, from our side, what we need to do is always do whatever will be beneficial for sentient beings and bring them peace. So that's our job. Yeah. When it says transform everything into the great vehicle, that's the bottom line. Okay. The bottom line of a Mahayana practitioner is to try and act in all situations when we're seeing, hearing, remember, meeting, talking, you know, any kind of relationship with others, to think about their benefit and to act in a way that will bring their long-term enlightenment. That's more important than their short-term pleasures, their long-term enlightenment. Okay? So that's from our side what we need to do. Then, in the words of the esteemed Chekawa, may all those who see me become enlightened, and may everybody who comes in contact with me and talks with me consequently reach the state of enlightenment without obstruction. So that's like the prayer that we usually say at the end of the Chenrezig practice. Okay, may everybody who merely sees, hears, remembers, touches, or talks to me be freed in that very instant from all suffering and abide in happiness forever. Okay? So we want both things, you know, because for us to pray that when others either think of us or dream about us or anything, that they have that good result in their mind, then we have to make ourselves into a person who is actually being a great benefit to them. Otherwise, how is that going to happen? Yeah? If others, whenever they think of us, they think, oh, she's so rude, then it's going to be very difficult for them to abide in happiness forever, because we are so rude and they think of us as being rude. Okay? Yeah. That person's so stingy. That person's so manipulative. You know. So if that's the reactions that our behavior is invoking in others, then you know, praying for them to see us and abide in happiness forever, that's going to take a while. So we have to reform our actions. How do we do that? By, you know, whenever we're seeing, hearing, you know, touching, talking with others, having an attitude of being a benefit to them, especially an attitude in the long term. Okay? Yes. And he says, this is the yoga on which to rely. Isn't it? Yeah. Yeah, so that is one prayer. Maybe we should put that one up somewhere. Are you reading what's on the mirrors in the bathroom now? The bathroom, I go to, the thing is so low, it needs to be at eye level. You know? You overlook it. Oh, there I am. Yeah? Should look, oh, there I am. Yes, that's what I need to do. Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Reminds me when we visited City of 10,000 Buddhas in Tagata Hall, the monks monastery. When you go in the bathroom, like bordering the mirror, he actually said that the women didn't have mirrors, but the men had mirrors, and they were bordered with like autopsy photos all the way around. Just
Yep. Yeah. Yep. Very good for the mind to do that.
I have a question.
Uh-huh.
Earlier we talked about the precepts and commitments. In fact, it's come up a few times, the precepts and commitments of thought training. Are those under the Bodhisattva vow, or are they talking about
No, they're talking in this book, okay, of the 7 points. One of the points is the commitments of thought training, and one is the precepts of thought training.
But do we take them in the same way? And when we talk about all the precepts that we take,
Oh, no, you don't have a ceremony in which you take them, but the idea being that if you are enthused about bodhicitta, you make these aspirations yourself on New Year's Eve. Okay? Yeah, no, there's no ceremony for taking them like you take the Bodhisattva vow.
So what is the saying there about do whatever is beneficial for all senses?
Yeah. Whether seeing, hearing, remembering, meeting, or talking to them, always do whatever will be beneficial for sentient beings and will bring them peace. Okay. And when you think about what's beneficial for sentient beings, we should definitely think in the long term. Okay, not just giving them temporary sense pleasure. Sometimes you give them temporary sense pleasure as a way of making the relationship so that then you can lead them, to more long-term things. But we should never just, make giving them sense pleasure our chief objective and forgetting the long-term benefit. Okay. Otherwise, we may get people more engrossed in sense pleasure than they were before they knew us. Yeah? Yeah. I was just reading one Buddhist organization, to raise money. Then they had a cocktail party, and I just thought, no. Or yeah, just some ways of doing things. You say, oh, well, it makes them happy, but no, that's not the way I want to make them happy. Yeah. Chocolate cake, on the other hand, it's never as good as it is when you imagine it. Have you noticed that? I talk about chocolate cake, but when it's served, half of the time I don't eat it because it's never as good as you think it's going to be or supposed to be. So, I think the last one we had, it became a chocolate. Yeah, didn't it? And it wasn't even a brownie; it was a chocolate crust. That was oh yeah, the fault of the egg replacer. Yeah, we know. It wasn't the cook, yeah.
We had someone down at Abbey, we talked about how brownies, this whole thing about them having this pleasure, bringing happiness from their own side. We had someone with respect who actually came going to all of her favorite places that had brownies. Actually, that was true, and she found out that her mind had a lot more higher expectations of what actually the reality was.
Yeah.
It wasn't coming from the brownie side, was her conclusion after that.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, it's not. Okay. Okay.